Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to this chapter of Foundations of Planning. These are the learning outcomes that we would be covering in this particular chapter. So let's talk about what is plan. This is one of the primary function of any organization's management. Or for being an individual, everybody needs plan in his or her general life. So, in terms of management, it is basically the very primary objective or activity that is involved in management. It is basically helps or decide about or define their particular goals or objectives that are set to be achieved. Of course, it helps in establishing an overall strategy for achieving those goals and developing plans for organizational work activities, or we can say the operational activities that are required to fulfill those goals which were set by the organization. There's a term known as formal planning. Basically, when we talk about formal, it is about being specific within a given period of time and in a written form and shape. So formal planning basically is a specific goals covering a specific time period, written and shared with all organizational members or the relevant people that are relevant to that particular plan. So therefore, it is known as formal planning. So let's talk about why managers need plan. Purpose of planning. It provides direction to all the resources, all the directions which are needed by the resources, management, or employees required to achieve the goals are decided here. It helps them to figure out which way to go. It also reduces uncertainty once the direction is clear and the job efforts required or the tasks needed to be required to fulfill particular goals or targets. If once everything is clear, it reduces the uncertainty, of course. When we have a clear direction and we also have a lower uncertainty in the organization, in our daily life, it also reduces the wastes in terms of cost, in terms of resources, in terms of time, in terms of value, and everything is being saved from being wasted. And of course, it reduces the duplication of efforts required to achieve a single goal. It also, of course, sets the standard for controlling. It helps out, makes it clear for the management to make sure what are the areas that needs to be strictly monitored and what are those areas which are at the dispense of their employees, which do not longer need any kind of monitoring or strict observation. So once we have a proper plan and we have certain our direction, we have also reduced our uncertainty and waste of resources. So of course, it is going to improve our performance. Let's talk about that. The formal planning is also associated with higher profits and returns, of course, on assets. It helps in financial planning, helps in achieving the financial results properly and in a positive direction. So the quality of planning is equal to the quality of performance. Better it is planned, better would be the execution, and higher would be the performance. The external environment can reduce the impact of planning on performance. Indeed, there are certain factors existing outside which need to be considered while making a plan. If the environment is volatile, uncertain, and dynamic, for example, it needs a plan that is relevant to that particular external environment. So therefore, there are also certain factors that needs to be considered while we are planning for our organizational goals. Form planning must be used for several years before planning begins to affect performance concern. Form planning must be for the longer period of time so that it accumulates and reflects in the organizational performance later on. Now here we can see the elements of planning. It includes goals, that is the objectives of the organization. Whereas we have a second element, that is the plans. We will be discussing more on these two in detail, but let's talk about them in a brief manner. Here the goals are the desired outcomes for individuals, groups, or entire organization, or for the people who are working in the organization. It provides direction and evaluation performance criteria. For example, people must meet the given tasks of the organization so that they must be evaluated, and of course that is called the evaluation, performance evaluation. Whereas plans are the documents that outline how those goals are to be accomplished, and it also describes how resources are to be allocated and establish activity schedules according to the achieving all those goals. So plan is a bigger umbrella and the goals are smaller subsets that are more specific according to the plan. So we have here the financial goals as well. Of course, finance is the lifeblood of any organization. Of course, when we are planning, we do have to consider the financial goals as well. It is related to the expected internal financial performance of the organization. The second type of goals are strategic goals related to the performance of the firm, related to the factors in its external environment in terms of competitors. We have stated goals, which are the official statements used to display for the public. Whereas we have real goals, that is, the goals or tasks that are set by the organization to be achieved within the organization. So we can also look at this statement in these two concepts interrelated, since the real goals are performed within the organization, which are required to be done timely, so that the stated goals or the official statements or words or goals set to be achieved by the organization that are displayed for the public consumption are achieved properly once the real goals are met by the employees within the organization. Here, some stated goals of large global companies are being displayed, including Target, Starbucks, L'Oreal, and McDonald's. Now, coming to the second part of planning is the plans. So we do have types of plans, as we discussed the types of goals. When we talk about the breadth of the plan, we are talking about the strategic or operational. When we talk about the time frame, we are talking about the long-term plan or the short-term plan. When we talk about the specificity, we are talking about the direction of the plans, or being very specific to achieve a certain goal or target. So we do have a plan to achieve that particular target as well. Similarly, frequency of use, for how long this plan would be effective, and would it be repeated or not, or we do have it as a standing policy or a standing plan to deal with an uncertainty which might be existing externally or outside of the organization. Let's talk one by one about them. Types of plan are, one of them is strategic. It establishes the organization's overall goals and seeks to position the organization in terms of its environment. And it also covers the extended periods of time. Sometimes strategic plan is related to short term, sometimes it is for the long term. So strategies might be made to achieve the competitive edge over the competitors, or to sustain their business practices. So these might include a strategic plan so that they maximize utilization of the organization actually. Second is operational plans. It is basically it specifies the details of how the overall goals are to be achieved. It covers a very short time period. They are actually the operational activity and the activities that are done within the organization by the employees on regular basis. So the overall goals that are set by the organization or the management are achieved on routine basis. Now we have the long-term plan versus short-term. Simply, a time frame extended beyond 3 years is categorized as long-term, while less than 3 years or within the 1 year or less time frame, these plans are termed as short-term plans. When we talk about these specific plans, as the term itself explains, that the plans that are clearly defined and leave no room for interpretation. It means they are already defined, interpreted, and specified by the management. Whereas the directional plans may be flexible plans. These plans are set out general guidelines and provide focus, yet allows discretion in implementation. We can say the policies and practices are different. This is the term directional plans, which includes these fluctuations actually. However, organization or managers do provide certain guidelines, certain policies that individuals are supposed to follow. But since it includes, depending on the nature, maybe depending on the uncertainty, or maybe depending on the situation, the employees may delay or utilize that policy sooner to serve the customer maybe. So it includes in the directional plans. So do we have that plan just for single use, or it would be operated for a longer period of time? This is called single use and standing plans. A one-time plan is specifically designed to meet need of a unique situation. For example, in COVID-19 right now, every organization is dealing with it. But once the COVID-19 is over, maybe they learn new things from this, but ultimately that particular plan would be a single use plan, because after COVID-19 the situation would be near to normalization and again on the old track. Similarly, standing plans are the plans which are used for the ongoing purposes, such as operational purposes, which are done on repeatedly and on routine basis. So for these activities, standing plans are utilized, such as in COVID-19. After COVID-19, the old plans would be activated again, and the operational activity would be rescheduled according to the normal routine. So since we have talked about the goals, types of goals, plans, and types of plans and their subcategories, now it's time to discuss about what are the traditional goal settings. It is basically the broad goals that are set at the top level of organization, and then they are broken down, which are intended to direct and guide for the employees. And then of course, if goals are distributed according to the department, or they are distributed further down the line, so goals lose clarity basically, and it focuses lower level manager attempt to interpret and define the goals for their areas of responsibility. Now we can see in this exhibit that goals are being interpreted by the different departments and divisions or employees according to their responsibilities or perspectives, and this is the main problem or the downside of the traditional goal setting. So what would be the effective one? Then the Peter Drucker 90s almost came up with the idea of MBO, that is management by objective. Why don't we set objectives and then collectively we achieve those objectives that would be aligned with overall organizational goals? That was a good idea. And specific performance goals are jointly determined by the employees and managers, of course, because each goals would be broken and planned according to the department, and progress towards accomplishing goals is periodically reviewed by the members or the management as well, and the rewards are located on the basis of progress towards these goals. That sounds good, quite good enough. And the key elements are the goal specificity. They are more specific, they are more fixed, they are very clear, and participative decision making makes the goal setting or objectives more relevant to the practicality or reality within the field. And an explicit performance evaluation period is set, of course, and feedback is being taken by the employee, by the management from the employees as well. But we do have some problems and MBOs. Maybe MBOs may not be effective in a dynamic environment, since we are talking about the specificity. And maybe individuals' accomplishment are overemphasized, and individuals are talked about do more, and have to be precisely getting overloaded. It may also become just a routine task. At a certain point of time, they are being just reshuffled and then represented again and again, and the whole process just follows, and nothing new or creativity or no innovation comes up in the organization. So it gets over routinized. So these could be the potential pitfalls of MBOs. Since we have problems in MBOs and goal settings as well, so what should be followed? These steps are those should be considered when we are setting goals. Review the organization's mission statement, why they are existing, what processes they would be doing, where they want to go, and ultimately to whom this organization would be serving. So the question of do goals reflect the mission must be answered. Evaluate available resources. Once we are setting the goals, do we have the resources available? Maybe employees training required for setting particular goals depending on the nature of the goals. So do we have available resources that would be equally meeting the challenges of achieving those goals? So are resources sufficient enough to complete the mission? Must be answered. Determine goals individually or with others. Are goals specific, measurable, timely? Are those goals to be achieved individually by each employee, or those individual employees must be grouped up so they would be able to achieve those goals? It must also be determined. Fourth step to goal setting is write down the goals and communicate them with the employees. Is everybody on the same page? Do they know what you are going to plan for? Do they know? Are they aware how those plans are deep enough? How those plans are feasible enough? Are those practical? So, and what would be the way to achieve those goals? So everything should be made clear to those relevant employees or everybody in the organization who are related to those goals. Finally, review the results and whether the goals are being met or not. So, what changes are needed in mission, resources, or even goals must be addressed. These are the contingency factors in planning. That is, the manager's level in the organization must be taken into account when we are planning. Strategic plans are made at the higher levels, whereas the operational plans are made at lower levels. Degree of environmental uncertainty do also affect the plan. That is, in a stable environment, the plans must be specific, or the specific plans can work out. Why? Whereas in the dynamic environment, the flexible plans would be better because of the uncertainty or changing environment rather than specific. So the third is the length of future commitments. When we talk about the commitments, our current plans must be affecting future commitments, and they should be sufficiently long enough in order to meet those commitments. hierarchy organizations where the strategic planning is done by the top executives. Middle level executes them, and then the first level managers do operational planning. So these are the different stages or levels when we are talking about the hierarchy of organization, and this is how planning works in the hierarchy. So we do have different approaches to the planning. First is the establish a formal planning department, and second is involving organizational members in the process. When we create a group of planning specialists that help managers write organizational plans, but it doesn't mean that we have to build a department for planning, and the whole planning is made by that particular department, but not the management. Planning, therefore, is a function of management. It should never become the sole responsibility of the planners. When we talk about the involving organizational members in the process, plans are developed by the members of the organizational units at various levels in organization, and then coordinated with other units across the organization to make it better understandable. So how do we plan in dynamic environment? That is, in an environment where the situations are uncertain or not being fixed, or maybe the technological changes are more frequent. So we have to develop plans that are specific but flexible, specific to the goals but flexible to the situation. Understand that planning is an ongoing process and can be revisited. Change plans when conditions warrant alteration. When needed, change a shift or make a shift in the plan. Persistence in the planning eventually pays off. Every organization must have a long-term plan, and the organization must stick to that plan and flatten the organizational hierarchy to foster the development of planning skills at all organizational levels. That is the top, middle, and operational level. Every level must be given an opportunity or flexibility to plan and develop the skill to plan, skills to plan for the organization or the ways to achieve the goals. Since we are planning in a dynamic environment, that the organization exists in an environment that is ever changing and brings new things as technology or uncertainties. So this brings us to the end of this chapter, in which we have discussed and defined the nature of plan, purpose of plan. We have classified the goals and organizational plans as well, and we have compared the goal setting versus plan, and we have discussed contemporary issues. Thank you for joining.